all the equations we've looked at so far have been what we call linear equations. So basically, it's going to be something in the form of 3x plus 2 is equal to 5. So linear equation basically means that you've got an x to the power of 1. So that's what we call a linear equation. And it comes from the idea that really this would describe a line. So, and generally a linear equation is in the form y equals mx plus b. So it works like that. So you can substitute x and y and get different values there. But what we want to have a look at now is what we call a quadratic equation. So a quadratic equation is one in which we say y would be equal to ax squared, and we can also say it's plus bx plus c. That's the general, what we call the general form of a quadratic equation. Now we won't look at this form really until next year. What we want to look at now is like a simple version of it. So we want to look at more in the case of where we've got y is equal to just ax squared. So, and solve these types of equations. Because what we want to look at is say, well, okay, what if we've got x squared equal to, and the y value is going to be something like 4. What must the values of x be? So really what we're looking when we do this, we can say, well, that would be equal to the square root of 4, which is going to be equal to 2. So x is going to be equal to 2 because 2 squared would be 4. We must also look at the situation though that x could be equal to the negative square root of 4. Square root of 4 is equal to 2, so that would give us negative 2. Now if we go back and check, we get minus 2 and we square it, that's going to give us 4. So a quadratic equation is one where we can have two solutions. The x squared, because it's squared, we can get two solutions. If it's x cubed, we can get three solutions. It's possible. It may be a case where sometimes we might get a quadratic equation where there is only one solution, and there might be quadratic equations where there's no solution. So if we have a look, the only situation with these simple ones would be if we're getting no solutions is where x squared is equal to 0. And that means x would only be equal to 0. So that's the only case where we're going to find that x squared, when we have an x squared is equal to something, that we're only going to get one solution. Where we might get no solutions, well, if we consider that x squared is equal to minus 9. So remember when we're squaring something, we're multiplying it by itself. So, and remember when we multiply two negative numbers, they multiply to give us a positive number every time. So if we're going to be taking the square root here, we're really saying, well, we're going to be taking the positive and negative square root of minus 9. So you can't actually take the square root of a negative number, not in what we call the real number system. It gives you what we call an imaginary number, and that's not something we do until extension 2 mathematics. So because the situation is in the real number system, we multiply two negative numbers to give us a positive every time, and the square root's basically saying, well, what number must multiply by itself to give us minus 9, and that doesn't exist. So there's no solutions for this one. So what we're going to consider is the hardest ones we're going to face at the moment is something in the range of saying, well, if I've got 5x squared, and that's going to be equal to, let's say, 20. What's this going to be equal to? So to get x by itself, well, we get x squared, we divide both sides by 5. That gives us x squared is equal to 4. And then again we go, okay, x squared is equal to plus or minus square root of 4, which means x is going to be equal to plus or minus 2. So that's the hardest type of equations we're going to get, where we're going to have to do a manipulation on this side to get x squared is equal to some number, which is going to come down to be a plus or negative of the square root